My Gavan and Melanine, and well met indeed. I am Arachir Galadirthan, the head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, and welcome back to Divide and Conquer as we continue on with our last version 2.2 faction overview for Isengard. So let's just get on with it then. So the size of your domain and your starting army as Isengard is small, of course. You start with just Isengard itself. Within there is Saruman and a few units, mostly raiders. In the fort just south of that is Ugluk with a few raiders again, but a couple of mid-tier. And then finally Lurtz in the furthest fort with the same garrison. So relatively small army, but a massively small domain with only one region. Of course, Saruman is your leader, and his bodyguard are Guard of the Orthanc. Orthanc Guard as they're now called, which is a slightly easier way of saying it. And they're just dedicated elite spearmen. Ugluk, who is in the first fort, has, I think, berserkers. Yes, he does, indeed. So he's a very aggressive attacking general, but he's not particularly defensive. And then finally, Lurtz, I believe, also has berserkers as well, just to make those two stand out a bit better. Because whilst we'd like Lurtz to be an archer, if he had the Uruk-hai archer unit, then he would be a terrible general and he'd die very easily. So he doesn't have that. Get ready for fighting. But Lurtz and Ugluk there, and Saruman, of course, all have their own strategy map models. If I'm not mistaken as well, I'm fairly certain Saruman gets a new one when he gets the ring as well, but I could be wrong. I could just have dreamt that. But Ugluk and Lurtz getting their own there, and a standard captain looking like that. Unfortunately, I can't show you a generic general as we haven't got any, so these three are all unique, so you'll always be able to see them on the map. I think, therefore, by extension, unfortunately, this is back in the time when we felt that unique general battle campaign models meant that you couldn't have a generic leader custom model. So if all three of these were to die, your faction leader will look like a standard Isengard general. He won't be unique. Of course, Isengard is your capital. It's the only place you've got, and your diplomat comes from the Orthanc itself, along with your Dunlending units that you can train a few of for some flavour and spice. So Rebel expansion, obviously you're probably going to take Ginyard as it's the nearest. You're likely to take Derweth and Bregnas as well, and you'll probably get to Gund before Enedwaith do. There's no rebels to the east. You've got to go through Rohan, and they'll beat you to Rockburg, almost certainly. Rockburg. You'll note there's a faraway rebel province for Tharagrondos, but Gondor or Enedwaith will certainly almost beat you to that too. And why you'd jump for that one anyway is beyond me, but it is a nearby rebel province. Neighbours and diplomacy then, of course, you're not actually at war with Rohan at turn 1. All you are is allied to Dunland. So no allies other than Dunland and no enemies at all. So you can go wherever you want. If you want to, you can make peace with Rohan and ensure lasting alliance with them and head west and conquer all of Eriador if you wish to do that. You can break your alliance with Dunland, attack them and climb your way up the mountains. Isengard actually have an awful lot of choice. You're not predisposed to going for Rohan, but of course remember that Rohan do hate you and they are likely to attack you, but with some money and some promises of maybe even regions you could probably get an alliance with them, and then that's secured. If you wish to, then you can head for Gondor and wipe them out. Do note, however, of course, that if you do go for Gondor, you will easily defeat them, because with you attacking them from the west and Mordor attacking them from the east, they will capitulate quickly. So whilst that may be a fun way of playing, and certainly to play however you want to, do note that Gondor might not put up much of a fight. Most people around you do dislike you, though, so Enedwaith are a bit ambivalent towards you, but Gondor dislike you, Rohan dislike you, Lorien, Bree, Northern Dunedain, they all don't like you. The Misty Mountains also ambivalent, so they don't like you, but they also don't dislike you. Economy buildings, blacksmith. Isengard are unique amongst the orcs in that they get a 4th tier of the blacksmith, which is going to come in handy when we change the trolls. But so you get 4 tiers of blacksmith, whereas all the other orcs don't. Other than that, though, you don't really have too much different to a standard orc faction. So you can go all the way up to a large city, but you can't go higher than a castle, so you can't get a stronghold. But you can get the highest tier of the city. In terms of guilds, as we can see with the castle, you only get the Fighter's Pit, which is just the one that gives experience bonus and trains the raiders. So that's the only guild that you're working with. Now the woodcutting building still exists, but no longer is tied to the Ent script, for of course at the moment we took that out because they break the game too much. And instead it's just a very powerful little eco building, really. And I believe it can now be built anywhere where there are forests and not just in Isengard, but I could be mistaken, but I'm fairly certain we gave it that change when we took away the Ent script. It's fairly easy to make money as Isengard, though, chiefly because Isengard itself will become quite wealthy, but also you can expand quite easily because the 3 nations that are around you, unfortunately, aren't really as good as you. So if you were to make peace with Rohan and take on Enedwaith, you'd have all of Enedwaith's lands very quickly, and so you'd be churning out money before you knew where you were. Whereas other nations have to kind of abide by the endure in the regions they have, rather, and then expand later, and so they might not be making as much money. Right, so scripts for Isengard. Already mentioned the Ent script is no longer a thing. We may bring it back later when we've worked on these new Ents to fix them so they don't crash, which is in the making. And so we may well bring it back, but at the moment it is not in the game. So in 2.2, the Ents will never attack you because they crash the game too much. Other than that, though, of course, the main and only real script, the chief script, in fact, of course, is the Saruman Ring script. So as Isengard, you have the opportunity to take the ring for yourself and not give it to Sauron. This opportunity is presented to you if you get to the ring from whatever town it's in. And you'll be given a choice. Do you give it to Saruman or do you give it to Sauron? Now, giving it to Sauron just really shows your allegiance, but you don't get anything. You aren't awarded, you aren't rewarded. It just brings Sauron back for Mordor, so it just makes Mordor more powerful. There is really no reason playing as Isengard to give the ring to Sauron, because by the point that you tend to will have gotten the ring, you'll be at war with many people anyway, or you will kind of already have won the campaign. So it's just a fun way to ensure total domination of Middle-earth. But Saruman, certainly in older versions, and I'm going to stick with this because then it's just the clearest and crispest way, but it may have been, I'm fairly certain Racer actually resolved it, but in the interests of ensuring the script kicks off properly, make sure Saruman is the person that gets the ring from the town that has it. Now, the ring is an ancillary, and something that people seem to go on and on and on about because they just simply do not know, is that ancillaries can be traded between units. Now, not every ancillary can, some of them a lot. Like Staff of Saruman could not be given away. His Ring of Power can't be given away. The Key to Orthanc likely can't be given away, but imported goods probably can. So if we jump over to Ugluk, Ugluk has got 4 ancillaries at the moment, and you can have 8. Saruman, however, has 6 at the minute, so he's only got room for 2 more, and the ring needs to be one of them. So what you can do is you can drag ancillaries over to someone else, and then suddenly, as you will just see, Ugluk now has the ancillary. So if you've done that and it doesn't work, it is because either the 2 generals must be in the same army, so they have to actually be together. It's not enough for them to stand next to each other on the map, they need to be in the same army. Because, of course, an ancillary is a physical thing. A trait is a person's trait, and that's more metaphysical. But an ancillary is a thing, a banner, a sword, a key, a staff. And so he has to actually be there to give it to the other person. But also, if you try and trade it and it doesn't, so for example, if we try and trade the Staff of Saruman to Chief Lurtz, you'll note that it doesn't go, because some ancillaries are locked. And so that may be why you're trying to give away something unique, and they can't get. But now Saruman only has 5, so it's much easier to maintain his 7. You need to ensure he only has 7 at the point that you want to take the ring. So you can give him 8 and play the game however you want, but then when you want him to have the ring, he must have 7 ancillaries so he can actually take the ring. That's the only restriction to the script, and it seems to fool and fumble almost everyone. But anyway, there we are. So once Saruman gets the ring, a few things happen. You unlock the Nazgûl High unit, which is a very elite late-game Berserker-style unit for Isengard. They're kind of uber Berserkers, so the stats of Berserkers, but they actually can defend themselves and they don't die very easily. They're a very good unit, and they're even going to be buffed further in future versions. Saruman, unfortunately, as Isengard then also is automatically declared war on by essentially the entire world. So all of the evil nations will declare war upon you. And if those good factions that you're not fighting against don't, then that's intended. But I'm fairly certain the whole world declares war. But I don't think the good ones do, actually, having said that, because Saruman taking the ring does not necessarily mean that they should be all that bothered by that. So there we are. It goes without saying, of course, that the ring script requires Saruman to be alive. If you have killed him before you get the ring and you wanted it, you'll never be able to get it. Only Saruman can trigger the script. But, and that's really about it. Other than, of course, you all thought I was going to forget the Nazgûl, which I was not. Every 15 turns, you will get 2 Nazgûl join you. Saruman's power is such that he can command them when he has the ring, and so they come over to you and you get them. Now this is every Nazgul, even Kumul the Easterling and the Witch King of Angmar. Now they take a little bit longer to come, and the Witch King, I'm fairly certain, comes on his own quite a long time at the end. So I mean, it's 15 turns between each. We're already about 60 turns before you'll get the first 8, and then I think it's another 20 or 25 for the Witch King or something like that. So it takes a long time for them to spawn. And they come with Nazkai as their bodyguard, and they will respawn if they die, and they will respawn to Isengard with Nazkai. But they will only respawn if you still own Isengard. So it doesn't matter if Saruman's alive, but you've been beaten back to Bregnas, for example. You need Saruman and Isengard to be yours for the Nazkai, the Urukai, saying hi over and over, for the Nazgul to return to you. Otherwise, when they die, if you don't have Isengard, they won't return. They won't respawn. Now, if Saruman dies when he has the ring, the script will come to an end. The Nazgul, I think they stay with you, but then if they then die, they will return to Mordor, they'll return to Dol Guldur. So, but that is overall it. It doesn't give too many other benefits other than the Nazgai and everyone declares war on you and the Nazgul start joining you. So, it's cool and it's good fun, but those are the actual benefits or effects. Of course, Isengard also get a garrison script, as I say in all of these, and you now need to build the armory to get it. You are not given free garrison troops anywhere as a human player, but the AI is. So if you attack Hornburg, they get a garrison, you look at their buildings and say, hey, they haven't got an armory, this is cheating. Then yes, it is. We give certain settlements free garrisons because the AI is rubbish at holding important settlements. And not just important settlements from a lore perspective, but important settlements from their own perspective. For example, let's take Rohan because they're prime candidates. Edoras is a huge city, and the Hornburg is a citadel, the highest possible tier of both city and castle. And yet Rohan treat them as if they're just villages dotted out on the outskirts of their lands. And you just think, why is Dunlusteer, for example, more important than the Hornburg? Because many's the time I've seen the garrison of Dunlusteer 3 or 4 times larger than that of the Hornburg. And this is a citadel. And so it seems to me that even the game's core coding, they didn't give the AI the thinking that larger settlements are more important. A very simple counter such as that would have saved so many problems. But they just don't seem to think that. So they judge settlements based on where enemies are, as far as I can tell, and they make a call on which one they think should be held better. And so, of course, that then just means that unique settlements tend to not be given importance by the AI, and they quickly lose them. So we give them a garrison to counter that. But you need to build the armory building, as already mentioned. But that's it. That's Isengard in a nutshell. Major map changes since previous versions, whatever their numbers were. The region, of course, of Heorot, which is here, or Heorotshire, in the centre of Enedrai, just to give another region between all of these lot. And I think that's about it, really. Yeah, as far as I can tell. Of course, the region of Fangorn is now just part of Western Wold and no longer its own dedicated region. But if you do go into the forest, you will bump into Ents. So if you do want to fight them to see if they crash your game, just send armies into the forest and you'll eventually bump into them. Oh no, actually, sorry, tell a lie. The Ents are all on vacation, aren't they? They're all down here. So you won't bump into them because they're all currently in the desert soaking up the sun. So there are no Ents, basically. You'd have to cheat move an Ent from down there up into your region and fight them if you wanted to fight them, which I don't recommend. So tips and difficulty for Isengard. Do bear in mind that if you rush Rohan, or if you even just attack Rohan early, they will be given certain armies to assist them. They will call forth all from their lands to defend against this new threat, much as Theoden does. Let every man and strong lad able to bear arms be ready for battle by nightfall. And it's that kind of theme. That's the last stand sort of scripts in a nutshell. But Rohan do get a couple, so they won't just get one when they lose Edoras, for example, or when they go down to 3 regions. They'll get them with all of those things. So they'll get a few last stands. But it is very easy to beat Rohan very early as Isengard. So if you want to rush them and get them out of the game, you can do. If you let them build up a bit, you might have more of a challenge, which is recommended because it's more fun with more of a challenge. But do note that, unfortunately, whilst the AI is these two, Isengard wins about 50% of the time, which is ideal. As a human player, you'll have no trouble beating Rohan. Absolutely no trouble. We can't make it harder than it is without really, really going over the top with cheesy and cheating tactics like spawning in massive armies for Rohan every turn or so. And that's just illogical. It's like, where are they getting these troops from? And as much as I'd like to make the game hard for everyone, I don't want to do it at the expense of realism and with the bringing of stupidity. So it won't be there. So that's Isengard. Now we'll jump over to the battle map and have a look at their roster in version 2.2. Welcome then to Isengard's battle map, and a quick overview of their roster shows that you have very few cavalry options with there being only one, and very few ranged options with there being only 3, and one of those is AOR as well. Very much an infantry nation with a bit of a leaning towards more heavy infantry. But there's a lot of options at the beginning as well. So starting at the beginning, we've got Snagger Skirmishers. Now that we've got Snagger Skirmishers, no, I'm just going to talk about 2.2 and then I'll talk maybe a bit more in a moment. But so we've got Snagger Skirmishers to start off. Easy early game trash that throw javelins. Useful for dying, and that's about it really. Although the 4 missile damage does mean that they will actually get some kills if people don't really think about them. But when they're actually in battle, the chance of them killing things is very low. And really, you only want to send them into battle to tie up enemy units that you want to kill with something else, such as the Orc Fellas. Orc Fellas are an early game armor-piercing strike unit, so effective against armor, 3 attack, 5 charge, only a 2 defense though, so they are perhaps the worst strike unit that we have in the game, but strike nevertheless. So they're slightly better than their stats would suggest because they are armor-piercing. Should note that Isengard is something of an armor-piercing expert nation with quite a few armor-piercing options as we go through, so armor will never really be a threat to you. You also get the Orc Band at this early trash tier, who again are there really just to make up numbers. Total defense is 4, attack 1, charge 1. They can do a shield trim and they get a bonus against mounts because they have a spear, but they're not really very good. They are just numbers, again, there to die. Along with the Orc Fellas and the Skirmishers. The Orc Fellas will actually get some kills, but the Orc Band are unlikely to get any. But there we are. These units are here reflective of the fact that Mordor sends forces to Isengard to assist with the kind of with the evilization, which isn't a word, of Isengard. And that's what these units represent. So they're the workers, the scum that Saruman sees as very beneath him, but he needs them to help him transform the Orthanc into an industrial powerhouse. And they now fight on the field. So that's the point of them. That's why they are borrowed. But when you come to the next tier, you start to get your own units. So we start with the Raiders. Uruk-hai Raiders are just a sword and shield early game unit. 5 attack, 3 charge, 10 defense. Just a reliable sword and shield unit, really, representing the Uruk's strong ability. You also get Uruk Reavers at this tier, which are a much better strike infantry unit, with a 6 attack and a 5 charge, which is 3 attack and a 5 charge, double that of the Orc Fellas, but the same charge. They have a better defense as well of 7 compared to 5. And they are also obviously armor-piercing. Now, there are a few less of them, but they are considerably better, and they are your first real strike infantry. Do note, however, that they still have poor morale with impetuous morale response. The Uruk-hai Raiders have average morale with impetuous morale response. Uruks don't really like fighting in deserts or grassland. They prefer forests and the winter. And so that's reflected in their stats. But those stats affect basically nothing. They are a minor thing that makes you think that the game has more things going on than you maybe first appreciate, but in truth it makes absolutely really not the blindest bit of difference, and it's a really minor bonus, so I would never really worry about it. Uruk-hai Archers then are your first dedicated ranged unit. 4 missile attack, which is quite good for a first entry, 3 melee, 3 charge, 7 defense. Not really that great when they've run out of arrows, but with 170 meter range and 24 arrows, it will take a while for them to lose them all. And they're just a good early game archer unit. Do note that all of Isengard's units, courtesy of Reforged, have this pretty cool white hand captain who has a white helmet and the white hand on his chest. Just wanted to point that out just before I forget. You also get wargs at these earlier tiers, the only cavalry unit you get. There's been a lot of cry for there to be a later game version of wargs for Isengard, but it's not going to be the case, I'm afraid. So warg marauders for Isengard there. Same stats as almost every other warg unit in the early game, or they need a new image. They have a 10 attack, a 7 charge, and an 11 total defense. So very aggressive. Very aggressive indeed. Now remember that they are camels, of course. They have average morale and petrous morale response. They scare horses because they are camels, but they also suffer in battle because they are camels for reasons unbeknownst to me or any of the team, or anyone I've ever seen work on Medieval 2. But for whatever reason, camels are considerably worse in prolonged melee than horses are. And wargs unfortunately suffer from that. So excellent on the charge and really good at killing weak and cushy targets, but not very good if you leave them in the fray. They'll die quickly. Right, this is an approximate break between the units. This is where the stats take quite a considerable jump, but I am fairly certain that these actually come before the barracks event. But in terms of stats, there's a big jump here rather than here, so that's why I put them on the right-hand side. But I'm pretty sure all three of these are pre-barracks event. With that being an approximation of the barracks event. So you get your two half-orc units. Half-orc Spearguard and half-orc Baneguard. Now the Spearguard are just good spearmen and 17 total defense. So you see what I mean by the jump from the tier before. A 6 attack, a 3 charge, so not very good aggressively, but good on the defense. Average morale response. Spears, so they get bonus against things that get spears. Now if you upgrade them at a blacksmith, then they upgrade to wear the more famous Isengard armour. So there's a bit more uniformity amongst your forces. And do note that they are lore accurate as well. We didn't just smack a unit together. Half-orcs are listed as being in Isengard's service. Baneguard are your next armor piercing, so another strike infantry. 7 attack, so only 1 better than the Reavers. With a charge of 4, so worse than the Reavers because they're heavier. But their defense is 12, so almost double that of the Reavers. So again, in order to make strike infantry better, normally their attack combined with their armor piercing is already as good as it's going to be. So increasing their survivability is the way that we tend to go. So they get more armor and more defense as they go up. So those are the half-orc Baneguard. You also then, of course, get Berserkers, a very, very iconic Isengard unit. Berserkers have an 11 attack, again effective against armor, but they also frighten nearby enemy infantry, and they are powerful against cavalry. They have an 8 charge, one of the best in your entire roster, and their defense is 12, which isn't that great, but they get 2 hit points, so they can endure deathly wounds. They have very good morale, and it is locked, so Berserkers will never run away, even though they're a relatively early tier unit. They will fight to the death. Do note that a unit that can't run away can still break, and once they do, their effectiveness essentially goes to 0, and they kill nothing. But so the morale that they have is important regardless of whether or not it's locked. Locked just means they can't run away, but it doesn't mean they can't get to a point where they think, damn, we're all going to die, and break. So watch out for that. They're not little demigods in your early tier roster. So then we come to after the barracks event with your mainstream units, dedicated of course, or I can't think of the word I mean. Primarily made up of the infantry and the pikes. So Uruk-hai pikes are a very good pike unit. 5 attack, 4 charge, 18 total defense, which is very, very good for a pike. Good morale response. They are one of your best units. They are definitely one of the better pike units in the game, notwithstanding, of course, Elrond's bodyguard or not Elrond's bodyguard, but the Imladris pikemen from Imladris, who of course I've been reminded now about 1,000,000 times since suggesting the dwarves had the best pikes, that they were actually the best pikes. But anyway, I apologise. Shouldn't rant. You also get Uruk-hai infantry, who are a very good sword and board unit with an 8 attack, a 5 charge, and a 23 total defense. Now, of course, they didn't make the cut in the top 10 sword and board unit overview, even in the later versions of this game that we've got in our beta testing build. But they are still good, and they will be buffed in the future, again, still further, making them more of an uber elite rather than a dedicated 3rd tier. So that in future it may look a bit more like that, with them bridging the gap. They get a bonus against Rohan's cavalry, so useful all round, really. Very good little unit. You get 2 units of ranged at this point, one available everywhere and one from Orthanc, and again, I'll serve this for my thoughts at the end, but Uruk-hai crossbows are effective against armor, of course, because they're crossbows. Only a 5 melee attack, though, with a 9 on the missile and a 17 defense. So they're reasonably good when the enemy encloses with them, which they will do. You should always try and close down crossbows as quickly as possible, and the AI also does. Good morale and good morale response, so they won't run too quickly. Of course, they only have 140 meter range with their crossbows. They're at average accuracy. Now, you also get the Orthanc sentries, who only come from Isengard itself. Now, the major difference between these two is obviously the sentries have a better melee attack of 7 compared to 5, a better missile of 10 compared to 9, better charge 5, 4, but they have a slightly worse defense of only 15 compared to the 17 of the Uruk-hai, because they don't wear the heavy plate armor. But they also can place stakes, and they have a high accuracy with 150 meter range compared with the crossbows average accuracy with 140 range. So they are a better crossbow unit, but they only come from Isengard. So do watch out for that. You will only get 1 or 2 of them every now and then, really. Right, and then we come to your Uber tiers. There are a few, as you can see. First off, you've got Orthanc who are just very good spearmen. 6 attack, 4 charge, 28 total defense. That's a very high defense. Like, that's dwarven level defense, which is good. Skill against mounts, of course, they're spears, and they can form a spear wall, which is also very helpful. You also, of course, get... Well, we'll chuck those out of the way because they're more dependent. I'll bring the trolls in. So you get Isengard trolls. Isengard trolls of the White Hand. Now, they have very good morale. They're locked. They are very good trolls. They're on the kind of... They're on... I think, in fact, they are, in fact, identical to Olog-hai. They borrow the same stats. 45 attack, 14 charge, 39 defense, and a 5 hit points. And of course an area attack, so they send units flying. But remember, trolls are infantry, so they can use battering rams, they can use siege towers and ladders, they can climb walls. So you've got to watch out for that. They are not affected by stakes, they're not affected by pikes. They are infantry. And they are very good. Now they come from, at the moment, anywhere where the troll region designation is given. But as Isengard, the only real place you'll get them is Isengard. You would then need to go up to the Misty Mountains or over to Mordor in order to get them somewhere else. Or Dol Guldur, you'll get them in Dol Guldur. So they are quite rare. And as many know from the discussions of this very week, in fact, this is recorded on the 17th of November 2018, and they are of mixed opinions amongst fans. Right, if you take the ring, though, we'll jump up to the Nazkai, you get Nazkai. So as you can see, they are just berserkers that wear the elite armour of the Uruks, but they do have a slightly more ornate helmet, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, they get a white hand helmet. And they are just better berserkers, as I say. Sorry, I turned around, there was a noise. And they inspire your troops, they're a bonus against mounts, they are effective against armour, and they frighten nearby enemy infantry. So they have all of the good things you'd want in the abilities. They have a 28 total defence, so massive defence for a strike infantry. 14 attack and a 12 charge, they with 2 hit points as well. I can't overstate how absolutely powerful these buggers are. They come from Isengard or Barad-dûr, and in the future, of course, they will be even stronger. They have excellent morale, and it is locked. Now, some people have said that at the minute they are let down by the fact that they do have quite a small unit battalion size, and so it means they do actually die quite easily, even though their stats are perhaps some of the best in the game, because they can get stun locked so easily because there's only 56 of them. So that will be addressed in the future. But finally, we come then to the Uruk-hai bodyguards. Who serve Isengard, apparently. But they are just your standard Uruk-hai infantry, but a bit better. So Uruk-hai infantry have an 8 attack, they have a 9, they have 24 rather than 23 defense, but there are less of them. So otherwise they are just Uruk-hai infantry. That's a nice, sort of solid bodyguard-style unit. Although they could do really with having something that sets them apart from the Uruk-hai infantry, so I wonder if perhaps the bodyguard version should all look like the captains. But then you'd not be able to tell which one your actual captain was, which is what you'd be suffering, but you'd be gaining the fact that your entire bodyguard would be easily recognisable with their bright white helmets, rather than blending in with your Uruk-hai infantry, which they currently do. Now that change may have been made in the next version, I can't say for certain. But there we are. So that is Isengard's current roster, and that actually rounds out these videos entirely. There is no one left to do. Of course, I plan to do Gundabad, but Gundabad overview won't be next week because I want to get Gundabad to a point where their roster is a bit more kind of set in stone before we start doing an overview for them. And also certainly their gameplay is a bit more set in stone. So at the minute we're up against just Isengard's 3 nearest neighbours. Enedwaith are coming in from the rivers and the fields, Dunland are coming in from the hills, And farthest to the other side, from the low plains of Rohan, come the cavalry. So we'll speed it up so they actually get into battle. And I just wanted to briefly talk, because Isengard is hot off the press at the moment. There will be some changes in the next version. So in your version, 2.2, available at the moment, 17th of November, this is what Isengard is like. However, in the next version, the Rise of Gundabad patch, Isengard will be changed considerably. Chief amongst these changes is that the Nazkai will now also throw firebombs. So they will have exactly the same stats as they have now, and they will have the same weapon as they have now. They will fight the same way, but before you charge them in, you can throw a firebomb if you want to. And they will be relatively explosive. Their numbers are also going to rise. I take the point that their numbers are so low that they get stun locked easily and they die often. And given that they are so rare, and at the point that you tend to get Nazkai, you've essentially won the game. I'm not really all that bothered by increasing them up to about 90 or so. Basically the same size as the Berserkers, who have 83, at the minute they have 56. So about 30 more, 27. The Trolls of the White Hand as a unit themselves are going. They are being cut. But I've seen so much outrage to this from some people. Many people agree with the change. Some people absolutely loathe it. But what we're actually going to do, if people just stopped and listened before they just start ranting about it. Trolls of the White Hand won't exist, no, and Isengard will no longer be a troll region, but providing Saruman is alive, you don't need the ring, you just need Saruman, you will be able to train Olokai out of Mordor, Mountain Trolls out of the Misty Mountains and Mordor, and Dol Guldur trolls out of Dol Guldur. Although I don't think we will do the Dol Guldur ones, we'll basically just do Olokai and Mountain Trolls, and you'll be able to get them anywhere the troll region is present, which won't be Isengard. In addition to that, something that people are again blissfully unaware of, Isengard have a level 4 blacksmith that no other orc faction gets. So, as Isengard, once you've trained your mountain trolls, if you then build a tier 4 blacksmith, you will be able to upgrade them to look exactly like this. So whilst the Trolls of the White Hand as a unit name will no longer exist, the unit itself will very much be present for Isengard, and you will still get trolls. You will just have to actually now go out and get them. You will no longer get them in Isengard. Isengard is not known for having any trolls. They come from the mountains, they come from Mordor, and they come from the Troll Shores or the Ettenmoors in Eriador. And so you'll have to actually just go and get them. And I'm absolutely flabbergasted at the number of people who, A, thought that the Nazkai were going to simply be bomb throwers and nothing more now, as if they had no melee weapon whatsoever, which just is baffling to me. And also people did not like the fact that the trolls were going, even though the Isengard will still get trolls. So I had to say that, and it felt like a prudent point to say it in an Isengard overview. Now, the other things I was going to discuss is, to me, it feels like the Snagga and the Orc Band shouldn't really be here. I appreciate that, as I already explained, they're there because they were sent from Mordor to help Isengard start readying for war. But now they just kind of feel like they're there because Isengard has need of extra units or something like that. The Snagga skirmishers are utterly useless, and as are the Orc Band, and I think they sully the Isengard roster personally. They take away from this elite Uruk fighting force by adding in this early trash that you just don't need. And I would much rather, to be honest, that with Isengard getting these extra changes in the later game, I would rather that simply the Snagga and the Orc Band just not be available. And instead, if you want this kind of earlier tier trash, you'll need, like Gundabad, to train the Raider units from the guild. So that's likely something that will happen unless I'm met with extreme objections from any other mod team members. Because I just don't think they should be there. Isengard should be unique. It's the whole reason we're taking the trolls from as a dedicated unit and making them more of an AOR from far away, is because Isengard should play like Gundabad. They should be a bit unique. They shouldn't just be a Mordor, Dol Guldur, Angmar or Misty Mountains style faction in that it's just all about numbers. Isengard are more elite. Now, it still is relatively about numbers in comparison to, say, Gondor or the Elves or Dwarves, but it shouldn't be totally about numbers, and at the minute it seems to have that feel. So Snagga and Orc Band will likely be gone. They will likely disappear. Maybe a unit will come in their place. We've got the room. That will be discussed. Now, the other thing, as has been pointed out quite a few times, is that the Uruk-hai crossbows and the Orthanc sentries are actually remarkably similar, almost identical, in fact, with the difference really being that one comes from Isengard only and the other's available everywhere. But otherwise, there's not really enough to separate the two units. And so I think the sentries will probably be looked at. And maybe cut all together, because I also, our army's routing en masse, I also would quite like to give Saruman his own dedicated unit. So a unit that cannot be trained anywhere else and is just Saruman's bodyguard. Because, again, he is arguably the second most powerful being in Middle-earth at the time of the War of the Ring. And the fact that he has just a sort of generic-y spear unit, who are holding the line, though everyone's running away, which is very cool. Even though he has a dedicated spear unit, they are a bit average. They're not amazing. And so I'd much rather that he did have some sort of really elite. Now, I personally don't think Saruman would ever have a bodyguard of Uruks. Uruks are his creation, but I don't think he would entrust them with his life. He would entrust loyal, dedicated followers from Dunland. So his bodyguard would still be humans, as it is at the moment, which is known, again, from the books. Even when Isengard is readying for war, the defenders of the Orthanc itself were all Dunlendings outfitted in Isengard armour and defended by humans. So we take that even further. And so Saruman's bodyguard will still be human, but they'll probably be a bit better than their stats really have any call to be, given that they'll be Dunlendings. But anyway, there we are. So those are some changes. The Orthanc sentries may well be changed or cut or just edited in some way. The Snagger and Orc Band are likely to be removed, and their role will be replaced by the Raider units from the guild. And Saruman will get his own bodyguard. Along with changes that we know we're going to do, like the removal of the Trolls of the White Hand and the replacement of them with Mountain Trolls and Ologhai from the other regions. And the Nazkai now being a firebomb thrower before they then draw their hefty swords and kill everything around them. But anyway, there we are. That is Isengard, and that is every faction overview for version 2.2. Now, when the Rise of Gundabad releases, I'm not going to redo every faction overview, not in the slightest. But I might redo some of the really majorly changed ones, such as the Dwarves, because they've had these huge overhauls. Likely Isengard, because by 2.3 they will be substantially different. But I'm not going to redo everyone. Most nations have had minor changes, some have had no changes. So it'll only be those with massive changes, but there we are. So the next one of these will be Gundabad, and I can't tell you when it will be, down the line sometime. But until we speak again, dear friends, Navahar Naden Perimad Melonin, and farewell.